This is From Destruction to Dignity with Janice Pons. Each week, Janice shares her wisdom to enlighten, educate, and advance the culture in America today. Janice Pons is a mother, author, and free thinker, and your host for our podcast this evening. Now let's join your host, Janice Pons.
Greetings, greetings, greetings. Come on in. Come on in. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am so glad that you're here. Thank you for joining in. My name is Janice Pons. I am your host on this podcast, on this show, From Destruction to Dignity, Clinical Perspectives, Spiritual Truths. I am so glad that you're here. You know my heart, right? You probably can say it, the three things: provoke thought, bring awareness, and point people towards intervention. I tell you, when we become intentional with doing that, some powerful things can happen. And I am so thrilled to dive into what we're going to talk about tonight, because in terms of provoking thought, bringing awareness, and pointing people towards intervention, I can't tell you how much my heart has so much compassion for our children and our youth. I know how impressionable they are. I know, as many of you do, the vicious attack that has been perpetrated against our children in the Constitutional Republic of the United States of America. Anybody that would conclude, there she goes. What's the big deal? It's a big deal. It's a big deal. Never seen anything like what we're dealing with now. Because before, one thing for sure, there was never a specific targeting on their backs related to sexuality. That is an entirely different presentation that we have been confronted with in the last 3 to 5 years, for sure. It started before then. Definitely in the last decade, things just, it's like, what are we dealing with? And it's like, no, we're not thinking about children. Okay. Well, as evidenced by, seems to clearly indicate something differently. And listen, developmentally, these children, developmentally, the way God basically created us to be developmentally, they can't handle it. They can't handle it. They aren't even from a chronological developmental stage. They're not even supposed to be dealing with certain issues, less alone having it introduced to them intentionally. However, that's where we are. Now, in addition to that, we have the intentional introduction of specific agendas and platforms related to sexuality. And we also have the sometimes unintentional creation of mood instability. So what we're dealing with tonight is unstable children, and turning it around. I really know by experience, I'm a mother, I am a licensed clinician, but this is all about education. This is not about Janice being a licensed clinician. Although I've been doing something in behavioral health for 43, going on 44 years now, and you just by observation, you kind of learn a few things along the way. You really do. And it's like, we might want to consider something different right there. This is not about Janice the clinician. This is about Janice provoking thought, bringing awareness, and pointing people towards intervention through a process of awareness and education. Then you take it and you decide if you want to do something with it, if you want to pursue intervention. And that can be a very powerful thing. And on my website, JanicePons.com, JANICEPONDS, all lowercase, no space, JanicePons.com. You can go to the resource page, and the research has been done for you, and you can navigate around there if you decide, you know what, I need intervention. You know what? My child needs intervention. My family needs intervention. As a spiritual leader, my spiritual leader needs intervention. Last week, we talked about spiritual abuse and needed intervention. It's real. And we want all of our leaders to thrive and to be well and to do well. That's my heart. So tonight, children, unstable children and turning it around. Now, it has to be a pretty broken person, let me put it this way, a deeply broken person who will intentionally harm their own child or harm a child with the intention of breaking their soul. That's a really broken person. That's a sick mind that would intentionally do that. Then you get into those personality-driven things, sociopath, psychopath. They intentionally do things. And how they get there, that's a whole nother show. I am going to deal with personality disorders. I'm going to do some shows on that because I did one in the past and it just ranked at number 1 when I dealt with borderline personality disorders, how to recognize it, how it happens. Narcissistic, breaking free from narcissism, a narcissist, that ranked high because people were like, wow, thank you for just putting that information out there for educational purposes of consideration and to encourage people to pursue intervention if they may have that dynamic going on within their own soul or are the victims of being perpetrated by those that have those personality-driven issues. It's real. Now, speaking of it, it's real. Do you realize that there can be mood instability, sudden, unpredictable, or frequent shifts in emotional states that occur with children? They can be created simply by adults that are the caregivers of these children. They don't know certain things. You can't teach what you don't know, and you can't give what you don't have, but you certainly can learn it. So I've seen certain interactions going on, and I'm like, my God. If an intervention does not happen in this situation, this child is going to end up mentally ill. The abuse, the degrading, the disconnectedness, the perpetration with verbalizations, it was just like, wow, here we go. What are we going to do with it? What is this destructive pattern that is being displayed that's going to lead to a demise? We want to turn it around and turn it into a path of dignity for a child. So sometimes children are exposed to certain things, and it creates disorders. It creates chaos. It creates unpredictability. It creates uncertainty. Where do we go from there? What are we doing with them? How do we turn that around? They become literally unstable. They become anxious. They become nervous. They become fearful. Why? Because of what adults are perpetrating towards them. These precious little souls. During C-19, wow, there was so much stress going on in homes everywhere. And these little children, some of them were left to fend on their own. The parents, what am I going to do? They had to go to work. It was a mess. It was a orchestrated, chaotic mess. So this orchestrated, chaotic mess set up difficult scenarios in homes that made families more vulnerable to things getting set up because they were under undue stress. and they didn't know how to handle it. The whole world was turned upside down. So, the suicide rate is up. The number one killer of Americans right now in our nation between the ages of 18 and 45 is overdose from fentanyl. In 2021, within a 1-month span of looking at data and analyzing data, girls in our nation between the ages of 12 and 17, there's the rate of suicide attempts went up 51%. From 2000 to 2020, the rate of children in this nation, the Constitutional Republic of the United States of America, the rate of children between the ages of 10 and 12 quadruple in terms of them completing suicide. So in their little young, undeveloped minds, their little souls, they were suffering to such a degree that they thought suicide was the way out. So, unstable? Yeah. So, outburst of anger. Abrupt verbal abuse, cursing loudly, violence being exhibited, putting their fists through a wall, putting holes in walls. When we see children exhibiting that type of behavior, where's that coming from? Where's that coming from? Depression to the point of wanting to end their lives between the ages of 10 and 12. Wow. Anxiety, worry. Feeling hopeless, feeling helpless, feeling like they are a total loser, being bullied. I've seen that online, being bullied. Saw online where a young girl, she took her life. Y'all probably saw it. Being bullied. Not sleeping the way they should, not getting adequate rest. Being unsupervised to the point where they just play video games all night long. No accountability, nobody watching over them. Eating anything they want to eat. Give them a jar of jelly, sugar-loaded whatever, and just let them eat whatever they want. No keyed-in adult supervision, creating instability in children. Talking loud, cussing. I saw a little girl and a lady interacting on social media the other day. Father, help the adults to see. Open everyone's eyes. And this little girl, she was about three or four. And the lady was saying, "Girl, you bad. And the little girl was just coming right back at her. And she said, "Where you getting this behavior from? Sit your little grown butt down." She was just going at it. And the little girl was coming right back at, "Where you learn this stuff from?" I'm like, hello? You're modeling it for her. That lady was clueless. She, honestly, I could tell, she had no connection in her thought processes that she was modeling for this child, and the little girl was simply mimicking her. And then she said, "I'll beat you." That was just the one. "I'll beat you." And the little girl said, "I'll beat you." I'm like, oh. Totally clueless. So, was she teaching her to be verbally aggressive? Listen. Are we making our houses war zones? Are we making our interactions with children war zones? Are we making our churches war zones? War zones. What are we modeling? Listen, mood instability can be created. That's my point. That's my point. Depression and bipolar disorder, even anxiety, a lot of these disorders that are in the DSM-5, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual that helps us to diagnose, and everybody's on the same page no matter where we are in the world. Everybody has a criteria, a prism through which we see things that helps us to get it and understand. There's symptoms, there's criteria that someone would be diagnosed with bipolar disorder, depression, bipolar 1, bipolar 2, all these different types of disorders. And some of it is related to chemical imbalances where the brain is making too much dopamine and norepinephrine and not making enough serotonin. And people will blast somebody because they took medication that helps to bring the serotonin up. Are there natural ways to bring it up? Of course there is. Of course there are. Exercise does it. Natural things do it as well. And then sometimes people can benefit from medication. I remember I used to be so against that until I saw a woman so depressed, and I was working as a psychiatric counselor at St. John Medical Center here in Tulsa years ago. And I walked in, and I was had been assigned to that lady, and I walked in her room, and she was just like, she couldn't talk. And I was like, ma'am, she couldn't talk, bottom line. Well, I was getting ready to go on a 3-4 week long weekend. I was going to be gone 4 or 5 days I was off. So when I came back, I just made a beeline to that lady's room. I was so concerned about that lady. I pray over everyone that I cross paths with, that I'm their primary therapist, counselor, whoever, whatever setting I would have been in back then in those days. And I walked in that lady's room, and when I walked in, she said, "Hey, Janice, how you doing?" I was like, "What happened to you? I was in here 4 days ago. You couldn't even talk." She said, "Wow, that medication. It's just like I woke up. I popped out of it." And I was just like, wow. Now that's when Janice went, "Okay, Lord, I've had a certain attitude towards medication. Maybe I need to consider it or reevaluate that." And I went and talked to her psychiatrist. I said, "Dr. Hill," I said, "what? That lady, she couldn't even talk." He said, "That was one of the most depressed people that I had ever seen." And I mean, just her response to that. And sometimes, this is the word that I've just learned to embrace, and I've seen it enough. Sometimes people need to be rebooted. Rebooted. It's like a battery in a car. Reboot the battery. Can you give me a boot? A battery boot. And I can't tell everybody's path, but I know I came to have a great respect for the psychiatrists that I work with. These are godly people that seek out the guidance of God to help people that are in a crisis. And I've seen some amazing things happen. So what I've seen make a huge difference is therapy. And I have seen medication play a part in it, and love. And love is support. Support. You're going to get through this. And maybe the medication can be temporary. But someone was telling me here lately that a spiritual leader was telling them, "Don't take that medication." You're totally out of your lane if you told somebody that. You're not even trained. But they went through the whole, "I'm not even going there," and all that they were taking them through. But the person said, "I went ahead and took that medication, and I'm better." I said, "Baby, pray over your medication and pray." If you decide, that's between you and God, and you follow peace. The Bible says in the Amplified, it says, "Let peace be your umpire. Let peace be your umpire. And don't let someone that may not know what they're talking about, is not even skilled and trained and knowledgeable, telling you don't take medication. That's a dangerous thing. And you get into major liability issues when you do something like that. And it happens, and I've seen it happen more often than not. Let's get back to children because the same thing happens with children. I've seen it over and over again, telling people what to do with their children. And so what we're talking about tonight is stability. And even what I just said there are different types of intervention that can bring about stability. Now, look at this. Let's think about this. Children can become overwhelmed with their feelings, and they don't even have a language for it. Someone was telling me about someone they were dealing with, a little child, and the child was just going, ugh! Just going, ugh! Okay, wait a minute. Let's how about teaching them how to put a language to, ugh? See, that's called emotional dysregulation. Emotional dysregulation. There's an emotional side of the brain that doesn't communicate with the rational side of the brain. And we want to teach children how to do that. They get dysregulated. So we want to be able to bring the child's rational faculties back online. That's a skill that has to be taught. So one way we can do it is to rethink emotions. Teaching children, we're talking about unstable children, and how to turn it around. What would happen if we teach them how to rethink their emotions? So one way of possibly considering it is that parents can start by helping children understand how their emotions work. I've done therapeutic groups with grown men. They didn't even have the language of basic sadness, happiness, overwhelm. They were stuck. So I said, let's go back and teach them basic emotional language. Oh, that's what I was feeling when I was cussing all them people out and turning the table over. Yes, sir. That's exactly what you were feeling. And so you have to get a baseline where you start them. So kids don't go from calm to sobbing on the floor in an instant. Usually they don't. That emotion is built over time. They get frustrated. They'll have something will happen. They have a thought. They have an emotion. They have a feeling that goes with it, and that feeling can lead to a behavior. So if we can teach them those connections, might they be in a better position to understand how to rethink emotions? Where we actually teach them. A lot of kids are growing up thinking anxiety, anger, and sadness are bad emotions. There is one of the most, it's an old book that I did a whole therapeutic group around. It was called Making Anger Your Ally. The Bible says, be angry. Can you imagine that? The Bible says, be angry, but sin not. Because you can take that anger. Look at Martin Luther King, what he did. Look at Gandhi. Look at all those things were going on. They took that and they channeled that. They directed it specifically in productive ways, nonviolent protests. So anxiety, anger, what am I, actually thinking through? What am I experiencing right now? So naming and accepting emotions, listen, this is so powerful what I'm getting ready to say. Teaching children to name and go, I'm angry, I'm upset. Say what it is, name it. Name and explain, name and explain, name and explain. When they learn to name and accept, that's what they're feeling. It's a foundation for problem solving on how to manage it themselves. That's powerful. A lot of adults never get there. So if we intentionally teach our children that, it's like, whoa, wow, that's powerful stuff. All right? So we don't want to create a dynamic that's only happy and good, because that's not realistic in life, is it? It's not, right? So actually helping them to name and explain it and rethink it. and to have strategy, skills, and tools, how to do something different to effectively handle it appropriately. So modeling, remember the little girl and the woman fussing at her? I seen them cuss at them. You listen, these little 3 and 4 year olds, they're not born knowing how to cuss. Cussing people out. Modeling, managing difficult feelings is powerful. It's powerful. For younger children, describing your own feelings and modeling how you manage them can be incredibly useful. Just incredibly useful. And they're like, Mama, you sad? Yeah, baby, I'm sad. But let me tell you, Mama is learning that, I can get quiet. I can pray. I can talk. I can get my feet massaged. I can take a hot bath. I can listen to the music. I can do some deep breathing. I can calm down. And then, I can even talk to some people that are safe for me. They understand me. You can do the same. And couple that with a hug. Wow, that sure is better than cussing someone out and throwing things against the wall and turning tables over, because they learn by what they see. They learn by what they hear. It's teaching them how they can use words. How to use words. It teaches children to pause and to notice what they're feeling. It's a powerful tool. So you know what? We become the model. Parents, adults become the model. Validating children's feelings, powerful tool, powerful tool. Where you validate it, you don't pretend like it's not there. You know what? When someone validates your feelings where you are as an adult, you feel accepted. Validating is not like you're getting in agreement with their anger. It's just like, you validate. Yeah, you're upset. I get it. Effective validation means paying undivided attention to your child, helping them. You want to show them that you're listening. You want to give them your undivided attention. Now, sometimes they don't need your undivided attention. They need you to actively ignore them. So that's a strategy. You got to get good at that, where you actively ignore them. So let's say they're whining and arguing, using inappropriate language, having an outburst. You can reduce the chances of that escalating by, you withdraw your attention conspicuously. You just withdraw your attention. So when they engage in appropriate behavior, you can even drop a hint. Then you give them your full attention again. It's powerful. I've seen it be very effective. And then there's positive attention, where you willfully, if you pour that praise on, it amazes me the choices you're making now. This amazes me. Someone was telling me how they were interacting with their child and getting them out of the bed in the morning. It was not good. I said, sweetheart, no, baby, no. Here's another way to consider it. When you wake them up in the morning, instead of that other way, rub their back. Massage their feet. Do you know that child looked at that parent and said, Mama, what are you doing? So massage your back. You're going to get up. And that child was like, Mama, I like that. It sure is better than fighting and scrapping and cussing and maybe leading to a whipping. That young person learned how to be responsible and get on up and make good choices. Listen, we're talking about not creating children being unstable and turning this thing around. You have to give them clear expectations. You have to listen. What advantage do we have when we know what the expectations are? When it's structured and we feel in control because we know what to expect. Yeah, imagine that. How would that feel when we know what to expect? Listen, tonight we talked about unstable children. You know what? Sometimes they are created. That's not good. That's a destructive pattern that will set them up for mental illness. It sets them up for wrong choices. It sets them up that they don't know how to be solution-focused problem solvers. But we want to take them from destruction to dignity. And some of the things that I've just thrown out here tonight are things to consider of how we can empower our children, that they can be powerhouses. They can be solution-focused problem solvers. They can learn to give a language to things. They can learn to put a language to it and to learn how to express themselves, because we model it, because we don't want our children caught up in a destructive path. We want to take them, if it's going on, we want to stop it. We want to stop creating those pathways, and we want to turn it around, take them from destruction to dignity, because God has a powerful plan for our precious children. Let's embrace that role and run with them on this good path. Good night.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of From Destruction to Dignity with Janice Pons. Janice's mission is to provoke thought, bring awareness, and point people towards intervention when needed. As a reminder, this show is not therapy, but for educational purposes only. For more information, check out JanicePons.com or follow her on social media.
Education, affirmation, dedication, information, revelation.